You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live.
Hello and welcome to the Claret and Blue podcast live on Facebook this morning. I'm Dan Rolinson. I'm joined by my colleague James Rushton. James, how are you this morning?
Well, good, especially better now that we've seen the first man through the door at Villa. It's a good day, isn't it?
Tell me about it. We'll get stuck into all the latest news very shortly. For the eagle-eyed amongst you, you'll see there's another face on screen this morning. That's Matt Davies, our colleague at the Nottingham Post. Matt, how are you?
Devastated. I'm all right. Thank you. I'm all right.
Well, we'll explain that devastation, and the reason that you're on the podcast this morning for 10 minutes or so is that you are obviously based in Nottingham, Forest fan. Is that correct?
Yes, lifelong, mostly terrible. Yes, for the Forest fan.
Some ups and downs, more downs than ups of late. But yes, we've got you on this morning. Obviously, Villa have signed Matty Cash, their first signing of the transfer window, for a fee of 14 million, I believe, or up to 16. I'd assume there's some clauses in there for appearances and possibly international caps, things like that. But obviously, James, first of all, we'll ask you, happy with the sign, first one through the door?
Yeah, buzzing. I really think he can be a fantastic player. I only saw him once in person because we always saw him. I think we saw him score against Villa once or twice.
Yeah.
I remember that well. But I saw him this season. I think it was a different position, right back, and he's one of these players. I think every team obviously has one where there's just an energy about them, maybe a little bit of an aura. I think he could be something special. We'll see. It's early days yet, but 16 million when he was linked for 20 million to AC Milan, West Ham in January. I think that's a bit of a steal then, if I'm honest.
What do you think about the price, Matt? Because when it first comes about that you're linked with a player for 15, 16 million, the initial reaction is, in these days, that's actually not that bad. Is that a decent price for him?
Yeah, I think it's a fair price for everyone, really. The way the market's going to be this summer, you're probably going to see lower transfer fees because of the whole economic impact of coronavirus. He's not played a Premier League game, so it's a bit hard to go beyond 20 million for him. I think Forest dug their heels in asking for 15 and Villa got closest to it. I think Villa got a great deal, to be fair. I think if he has, if a player has one good year in the Premier League, then he's going to be worth 40 million or 50 million. So I think it probably works out as well as it could do for all parties, really.
And a player of that age as well, like you say, if he only needs one half decent season and he retains his value and a couple of good years at Villa, and then obviously you want to keep hold of your best players. But if someone, a Man City, Tottenham, Man United come in for him and they're offering silly money, then it's a great deal for Villa in the future. It's a good investment as well, isn't it, James? 5-year deal.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what Villa try and always do in these transfer windows is get these younger, probably more reputable talents for a decent price, 5-year contract. We've only ever seen it kind of go quite wrong, though, haven't we, with Veretout and just a guy. Not they were great players, but Matty Cash seems to be kind of along the same lines of a young player, pretty decent reputation, someone with resale value, and someone who comes in kind of lifts the general quality of the team. I know there's a lot of comparisons to our man, Freddie Gilbert, but we'll have to see. But I think that's a really nice way to kick off our window, to be fair.
Yeah, we'll talk about how it affects the Villa squad when we've not wasted any of Matt's time. So he's to talk about a former Forest player now. What's he like as a player, Matt, first of all?
Very attacking. I don't know if that fits in with how Villa play. Basically, he was a winger until last summer, and then Lamucci, the manager, made him a right back. They sort of flirted with it a bit. He played wing back before, and I think Mark Warburton and Ita Karanka saw he could do it, but he never really got a place in the team. And then he started last summer as a right back, and he was brilliant, better than anyone expected. He had this kind of link up with Joe Lolly that was really good, who Villa have been linked before, and he's a big Villa fan. And I think because Cash has played as a winger, he knows that role, and they worked really well together. So he's very attacking. He's like all energy. I've never seen him look tired. Up and down line all the time. He's pretty good defensively, considering that he's good in the tackle. He's decent in the air. He's quite a decent size. So I think obviously there's going to be a bit of defensive naivety because he's only played one season at right back. So I think if Villa can get into him and work on that side of his game, then I think he should be well set to be a really good addition.
I keep putting photos up of him on screen for those watching on Facebook and YouTube. He looks good in a Villa shirt, doesn't he, Matt?
No.
I've seen a few comments as well that a couple on Facebook, just and some on Twitter earlier. That is he. People asking whether he's a Villa fan or not. Is there anything in that?
No, I don't think so. He's from down south. His dad used to play. His dad
played for Hale's own town, just over the road from me. And I think his dad was born in Tipton. So I think there's some rumours that he's local. His dad's local to the area, so he's possibly, or there's Villa in the family. So that means Cash potentially is, but I've not seen anything in my quick scour of Wikipedia to prove that.
He's got a good tale to tell because his dad played for Forest. But because Forest had Stuart Pearce, he was never going to get in that team. So I think he went to Wickham and played under Martin O'Neill. And then Cash went to Wickham as well and got released as a 14-year-old, ended up working in a shop. I think it was Next.
Wow.
Went to an academy at Bisham Abbey and then went on trial to Forest as a 17-year-old. So he's not had the typical backgrounds of, a Premier League footballer these days. So he's got a good tale behind him. And I think that makes him quite grounded as a person.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you're talking there, I'm thinking of comparisons with Tyrone Mings.
Yeah,
James, that's someone who's got into football the hard way. Jamie Vardy as well, players like that come through have to get in there, by any means necessary. Is that a good personality trait to have, James, in the modern game these days? A hard worker, someone who won't take the kind of fame and things like that of the Premier League for granted. He'll be respectful and grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, because I think it's like just a platform for players to only get better. I don't know if I'm talking out my backside here, but it feels like it's probably, I don't want to compare Matty Cash to like the best players in the world that have ever existed, but they all seem to have there seems to be a similar background. It's never been straight to the top in some circumstances. Yeah, I feel like, you see with Tyrone Mings, that grounding, it's something he always brings up as, his story. I don't know whether Matty Cash is the same, and he finds opportunities, there's opportunities for him to bring it up due to his profile. But I feel like, Villa building a squad, not just with decent players, but decent personalities. And I think it's a really good fit for the team with everything Matt's saying.
But you've interviewed him, haven't you, Matt, on occasion. What's he like as a man, as a character?
I think he's, like I said, grounded. He seems a good person. The good thing that I think about him from a Villa fan's point of view is that he never agitated for a move. So if he'd not gone to Villa this summer, he'd have been the same player at Forest. And I think that bodes well for Villa because, like we said, if he has a good year, he's not going to be pushing for a move to Man City or anything like that. So, he's a good, modest character. He fitted in really well in the dressing room. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about him. So I think they've got a good character on their hands. And he can play for Poland as well. He could play international football as well. That's another weird thing about him. He's got a Polish grandmother or something. So, you could lose him for a few games for the international break. But he's got a good background. And I think Villa's the perfect move for him in a way. The other thing I was going to say, because he should get in that team, you'd hope. I mean, I know you've got Gilbert and El Mohammadi. I don't know, you know Villa better than me, but I think he's someone who could play for Villa and he could grow quickly and improve quickly as well against better players.
Yeah, I think straight away he comes in and he's the starting right back without a doubt. I think the kind of general things I've seen so far on social media, I'm trying to get a tweet up on screen, but I'm struggling to do it at the same time while trying to talk, so bear with me just a second. First of all, it was Matty Cash's tweet himself. He says, absolutely buzzing to have signed a 5-year deal at Aston Villa, something I've always dreamed of since I was a young boy to play in the Premier League. It really is a dream come true. Can't wait to meet up with the squad, meet everyone around the club and the supporters. And that was quote tweeted by Stuart Broad, who says, you've got a good player from us here at Chris Wokes and at Ian Bell, his cricket teammates, they play together. I don't know anything about cricket. Wish you well, Matty. Forest fans are sad to see you leave, but excited to watch you in the Premier League. Thanks for all that you gave us. And that seems to be the general consensus, that obviously Forest are sad to see a quality player leave, and also maybe that tinge of what might have been that could have been Forest in the Premier League this year. We could have held on to him and he could have played for us in the Premier League and made his dreams come true. But also that happiness that, yes, one of our quality players is now moving on to prove how good he is. Yeah,
I think so. Forest, like every championship club, it's really depressing, isn't it? You develop a player and you sell them on, and I can't wait till Forest actually are the boots on the other foot, really. But that might be a long way. But Forest have this academy where they've churned out player after player after player. You go back to Genus, Dawson, Andy Reid, players like that. They've sold a lot of players for decent money. and he's the latest one. And I think the thing about the Forest Academy is that they do tend to produce good people, and as well as good players. So, Gary Brazil runs that academy for a number of years, and I've never heard of anyone who's like a bad egg come out of it. So I think that's a big positive for Villa to get a good character in, because they're not going to be at the top end of the Premier League, are they? But they will be hoping to be better next season than they struggled last term.
I think looking at the transfer window this year, if you're looking down towards the Championship of defenders you could sign, the name that you would see often was Max Aarons. Obviously, I'm only talking about right backs here. Obviously, he's with Norwich, 20 years old, English. And then Matty Cash was the other one. And obviously, we've got the Villa bias. We're going, we've made the right decision. With Cash is the one we wanted because he's the one who's here. I'm sure if we'd have signed Aarons, we'd have been saying the same about him. But as a Forest fan, Matt, obviously you've got some Forest bias. Which of those two would have been the signing that a club like Villa would have preferred to have made this summer? Is Cash the best of those two?
I'm not seeing too much of Aarons. I would say Cash is the best signing. I mean, you look at the clubs that were in for him. Fulham, Sheffield United, West Ham, AC Milan had a proper interest in him. That wasn't just a transfer rumour. So there was proper, some decent clubs in for him. I think with his age and the capacity to improve, I don't think Villa were going to get a better right back in necessarily, unless they were going to throw crazy money at it. But I think he's the kind of player that, to me, is perfect to sign from a Championship club to improve you in the Premier League and improve that player in the long term. I think it's the perfect addition, really.
Yeah. What about you, James? If you had the pick of those two, if this Football Manager you're playing, which one are you signing?
Probably Cash, because I think
Good answer.
I think with Aarons, I don't know if I'm getting confused, but I feel like they demanded 20 million. Like they set a flat price of 20 million, so saving 4 million there for me is good, because I think there's been interesting goalkeepers as well. I think that gives you a bit more money to put in that direction. But I'm going to go with a player Villa sign, because it's the way we have to go, really, isn't it? We can't say we absolutely cannot go the other direction. I feel like Matty Cash is probably not this like wonder kid who's going to rip up the Premier League, but he's going to be like a very useful player for Villa immediately from the get-go in a number of positions. So got to be Matty Cash for me.
The quote that I liked as well on the Villa website, he said, "My agent rang me and said that Villa were interested, and immediately it was the place I wanted to come to. I said, don't even worry about anywhere else. I want to come here and play." There's a lot of classic cliches, isn't there, in signing announcements at big club, big stadium, love the fan base, those kind of things. But he's saying all the right things, and I believe him.
I think you could have cut and paste any Premier League club into that quote, but I think it's good to hear. Yeah.
Finally, then, Matt, we'll let you go to carry on with the rest of your day before me and James talk about the other things that don't concern Forest and will literally be a waste of your time. Just finally, what kind of player are Villa getting here then, to summarise?
Young, energetic, attacking, exciting, never pulls out of a tackle, never gives up, gets a few goals. I think he scored twice against West Brom last season, both from outside the box. So he's not afraid of, being brave on the ball, that kind of thing. He'll never shirk a challenge. Maybe a little bit naive defensively, given his lack of game. So there's room to polish him up. But then if he was the perfect player, then he'd probably have signed for, a club right at the top of the Premier League, really. So, something I think Villa fans are going to enjoy watching him a lot over the course of next season. What's
his crossing like, finally? One we've not mentioned. Is that because he's rubbish at it?
No, his crossing's all right. I mean, he's not David Beckham, but I can't remember him shanking it out and play for goal kicks every time. He does a lot of low. I mean, everyone does low crosses now, don't they? Do any fullbacks stand the ball up anymore? I don't think they do. He loves a low cross, pulling it back for a striker to run onto. If you've got anyone who does that, I don't know. Have you got any?
We'll do one day, very soon.
Not at the moment, and not unless you spend millions and millions of pounds soon, which we will get onto. That's great, Matt. Thank you very much for offering some actual insight into a footballer rather than me and James just sitting and guessing on the odd glimpses we've seen. So thanks very much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
And we'll crack on without you. See you later.
See you soon, mate.
Right, it's
so
now.
Brutal, isn't it? You get absolutely axed off when you go. But I've got to reiterate, man. I'm really happy with Matty Cash. I feel like we've seen a question from Sean Jones, which is, what position do you think he'll play in?
Yeah, I've just seen that.
That's a very good question, because
I'm sure
winger
He's going to play right back, isn't he?
Yeah, winger and right back. But I feel like, yeah, it will be right back. But it's like Almo. Don't be surprised if there's a situation where he's placed on the wing. Like that's his character, isn't it? Right back, right wing, easy.
Well, I saw little bits on Twitter saying about him playing central midfield and him being able to offer backup in central midfield. But I had a quick look on who scored, and he didn't play central midfield once last season. So I don't know whether this is just kind of a youth football thing that you can play there at a push. But I mean, Villa's midfield's so stacked anyway that I doubt we're ever going to see him play central midfield. Like you say, I think he's going to come in and start right back, and the odd game where you need to be a little bit more defensive, and you see teams, don't you, sometimes play two right backs, one playing further forward at right wing. We might see him do that, but I think for the majority, he's going to come in and start at right back, isn't he?
Yeah, when he was breaking through at Forest, I know he wasn't having a heap of game time. It was over the last 3 seasons he'd been more of a centre midfielder. Then he's progressing to the wing. Then he's progressing right back. So I think you've seen like the development of him over the last few years of Forest, where you've had this centre midfield talent come through. Got a lot of work rate, got a lot of energy. Probably the same type of things you see a lot maybe in a John McGinn, right, as a centre midfielder coming through the academy. And you think right, box to box midfielder. But then you see probably more that the energy can be better used perhaps on the wing, and then again right back. So I think it's just like the perfect natural graduation of a player like we've seen, and now we have one ready to kind of step in and perform in the Premier League, because he could have been there with Forest. Like they were very, very hard done by, weren't they? I believe it's goal difference it come down to on the last day of the season. So look, I think it's a great deal. AC Milan were genuinely interested in, as they were with Anthony Robinson. They didn't get either. One ended up moving to Fulham, one ended up moving to Villa. So, I'm happy with that, mate.
What does this mean for Gilbert then? I think for Elmo, it's one of those, I think Elmo would have, in my opinion, if we'd not signed a right back, Gilbert would have started and Elmo would have been backup. I think he's 31. I think his contract's running out next summer anyway. So Elmo is always going to be the backup. What does that mean for Gilbert then? Does he become the backup and we potentially see Elmo move on? Or do we follow these links that we've seen in L'Equipe?
You can just say French media, mate. Like you can just
French media have loosely linked him with the move away from Villa. Is it that we see Elmo be the backup and Gilbert leaves, or is Gilbert going to fight with Cash for that starting right back slot?
I feel like the kind of template you have for Gilbert and Cash are very similar, aren't they? I think the kind of things you bring out with Cash, maybe not the finishing and the maybe not some other things, but I feel like when you say work rate, aggressive, kind of throwing himself into challenges, running
forward, tackle.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like Freddie, doesn't it? So what I hope is like it's like the goalkeeper situation we'll come on to. We're going to buy a good goal. We're probably going to buy another goalkeeper, it looks like. So just, then it's a negative for Tom Heaton, isn't it? I don't see this as a negative for Gilbert. I see him staying in that role, and I see it just giving more tactical flexibility. And also, it does open up the opportunity for a move because Almo can step in as a backup. I think just giving Villa a lot more options and taking the headache out of some of these tactical decisions that Dean Smith and the coaches have to make, is a big part of it. Sorry. You've got like a situation if there's an injury on the ring and you're not playing Trezeguet, you can bring up Matty Cash and bring in Gilbert or Almo at the right back. I feel like it's just the biggest benefit in the immediacy is tactical flexibility rather than saying is it the end. But there's an interesting link there, and it does obviously open up a situation, right?
Yeah, I think the more realistic possibility is we'll probably see Elmo rock up at Newcastle with Steve Bruce, just because he always gets the Steve Bruce move, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Just to kind of finish on Cash, I know obviously he's the main talking point, and we spent 20 minutes chatting about him. He's our first signing. This is all we've got to talk about. It just feels like he ticks a lot of boxes, doesn't he? There's a lot of good qualities that he's got. There doesn't seem to be many downsides. He's come in for a decent fee. I'd imagine he's not on extortionate wages. It's a good length contract that, like we said, if he performs well, he could still have 3 years left before we even looking at losing him. It's one of these signs that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And it's an exciting one to get through the door first, considering what position he plays, because we all want to see the striker. We're all waiting to see the striker hold up the shirt with the new number 9. But it's not a bad start, is it?
No, I mean, I think what always stands out for me in transfer deals as well, because I know there's a lot of agitation about getting that striker in. What always stands out for me in transfer deals is when what's his name, Tom Carroll joined on deadline day, and he mentioned this had been we've been waiting for weeks to kind of get the answer. So that happened on the last minute. Everyone thought it was a last minute deal that happened in seconds, and no, it hadn't. It had been going on for weeks. It had very clearly been going on for weeks from the words of the other club, Swansea, and the players. So these things do drag on. that's no different. It's just an insane window, and it's always going to be. Don't judge it off anything else. Just always know that transfer deals take time in general, and now it's even worse. Like, they're going to take longer in this era than any other era before. Like, it's clearly going to happen. Villa, I fail to see a situation where Villa close the window and don't have a striker. Like, that is just not going to happen, is it?
Absolutely no chance. We'll sign at least one striker before the end of the window. Hopefully, it'd be nice to get the striker in before the start of the Premier League season. We are cutting it a little bit fine for that now, but it's still a week, so you never know. There's a question from Michael Price. He says, "Now we've got Cash through the door. Who would you like to see come through the door next?" Now, as a name, obviously Watkins is the one that seems most realistic. Just a striker is who I want to see next, because ideally I want to see that striker come through before the first game of the season.
Yeah, I feel like with Cash, you've kind of got someone who can play on the wing. So you have got technically, I guess, that winger signing that everyone wanted as well, until that winger, if it's Watkins as a striker as well, is brought in. So, yeah, I think it's just about getting these key players in before that first match. It's going to be difficult. I feel like this Watkins thing may drag on and on. I mean, a lot has been hinged on this week, but then reports come off of Brentford asking for even more money because there's competition. It's hard because, like,
28 million that's for.
I think the EFL window, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure I've seen in the rule book that Premier League clubs can't deal with each other or Europe after the close, but they can deal with EFL clubs for a further week, I think. Right, I have to definitely get the full details on that and get it out there, but that needs to be public knowledge, because that's a big reason why some of these deals are harder to complete, because there's an extra week hanging down the road, isn't there? Potentially. So I'll look into that. I've seen that floating around. So it's again one of those things that kind of lies in the rule book between the bullet points. And we all know about the EFL rule book having to find out those Carabao Cup selection criteria. Could we bring drink water in and that? So yeah, I genuinely cannot wait for the day I don't have to look at that thing anymore.
There's a comment here from Lee. He says, just go and get Edouard. Watkins not good enough to lead the line in the Premier League.
Ooh.
We don't know that, though, do we?
The thing we throw back then.
We don't know whether Edouard's good enough to lead the line in the Premier League either. If we're talking about Premier League experience and seeing a striker who's done it before.
Yeah. I feel like you have a template there, right? And I think that Brentford system creates goals, so all you need is kind of any average striker to be on the end of those goals to convert a decent amount. But if you look at Magpie scoring, he goes to the Premier League and he scores goals. Ollie Watkins scoring even more so, put up to exact same figures as Tammy Abraham, right? 26 goals in the championship. I feel like we was 25 or 26 and we looked over the highlights. There was one missing, wasn't there? There's like a fancy goal somewhere.
Yeah. There's all his stats say that he scored 26, I think. And then there was a YouTube compilation from Brentford, I think. Like his goal
25 goals.
It was only 25. So I don't know if it was an editing error or whether there's some genuine mistake somewhere.
Yeah. Look, if you Tammy Abraham got the same, didn't he? It was like, I know they're different players and they shouldn't be compared. They scored a good number of goals in the championship. They got the same criticism. They went up, and to me, Tammy Abraham's a Premier League striker, no doubt about it. So, look, we've got to give Ollie Watkins a season, should he join.
Yeah.
You can't. I feel like writing players off is a really bad thing to do, especially when they're got that attitude like Matty Cash and Ollie Watkins, where they probably went a little bit of a longer way around. I know Ollie Watkins stayed at Exeter for an extra season when Brentford really wanted him. So, it's just absolutely nailed on personalities that the situation there is they can only succeed, right? They've got the right mentality. So why do we simply assume these players that have done it in the Championship can't cut it in the Premier League? And, the same must go for the Scottish Premier League with Edouard. The template is there. Dembele did well. He went to Lyon and he succeeded. Edouard can do the same because that template has been put into place. They're very similar players in terms of the way they performed in the Scottish League, where they've the background and the goals they put up. So, for me, I think don't judge, don't hold it against them.
Yeah, I think also having to have experience in the league that you're playing in doesn't also necessarily mean that it will work either. Because when we were in the Championship, Scott Hogan had done well in the Championship, Ross McCormack had done well in the Championship, and we signed them thinking, well, they've done it before, so they'll just come in and do it again. And that doesn't work either. So every season is different, isn't it? Just because it's worked out one year doesn't necessarily mean that it will the next anyway. So you have to sign someone, and if things all fall into place and it all works out, they can be a success. It doesn't matter what they've done before because every game of football is different. Paul McIntyre says, do you honestly think our season will be any better than last season if we don't sign a 15 to 20 goal striker?
Oh, we got a 26 one in our place, so don't you worry.
My initial instinct to that is that even if we sign a striker, or when we sign a striker, if they didn't score 15 to 20 goals, I still expect us to be better than we were this season, because we'll be defensively better, I think, for the entire season, rather than being such a mess before lockdown and then improving later. I think we'll be consistently better next season regardless. I'm not saying we'll be good enough to go and finish in the top 10 without a striker, because obviously, yeah, you need to score goals, but I think defensively we'll be better anyway. So regardless of if Watkins comes in and scores 10, I still think we'll have a better season than we did last season, just because we'll be defensively better.
So I think the best thing to kind of reflect on here is that interview Dean Smith did, where he said, right, we have to identify ways immediately, not necessarily just buying players. We have to identify ways of picking up an extra 0.4 points a game, right? So that is covering off your marginal gains. It is improving the general quality of the squad. It's making sure you don't go until Tom Heaton comes back without a first choice goalkeeper. It's about, carrying on where you left off last season. So I know a big name striker coming in does change a lot of things for Villa, but you've also got to look at kind of the benefits that signing your Ollie Watkins and signing your Matty Cash will bring to the general quality of the squad and help them kind of push to get that extra 0.4 points a game. Should that work out, that lifts you right up the table, doesn't it? Like over the course of a season. That is about identifying opportunities for instant improvement. One of those is a goalkeeper, because Tom Heaton is not back. Like there are games, Villa will play games without Tom Heaton. So I, in my eyes, you either trust it to Jed Steer or your Nyland, and I feel like the situation we've seen probably didn't do that well, did they?
Good timing with the question from Mark Price. He says, would you like to take Romero from Man United, who's been linked with the 10 million, I think is what I've seen, possibly from The Athletic. I've definitely seen them tweeting about it anyway. Or should Jed Steer get his chance? I think initially we were all thinking that, Heaton will only miss a couple of games, just give it to Jed Steer, and that's that question done, let's move on. But now Villa have been linked with the goalkeeper on multiple occasions. It does look like we're after a first-choice goalkeeper to come in and compete with Heaton when he comes back, and that looks like either being Romero from Man United or Martinez, is it, from Arsenal, who was linked, and then there's talk of a new contract with him anyway. Romero's a decent goalkeeper. I think I saw a stat yesterday that he's something like in his last 60 games he's got 30 clean sheets or something ridiculous. Like the games he's played, he's done well. Yes, he's playing at Man United and other clubs, but is that one that we go for 10 million? Seems a little bit steep for his age, but then we paid a similar price for Heaton as well, and no one could play him then. So I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like, again, you take it because, look, you have to play games. I'm going to keep saying it. You have to play games with that Tom Heaton. The way kind of Nyland performed last season, he got rocked instantly and he just wasn't up to standard. Rainer come back and there's improvement. So you could see the improvement a goalkeeper makes. And are you saying that you would risk that if you want to pick up your 0.4 extra points a game? Are you going to risk a potential losing streak on goalkeeper mistakes, all these sort of things? So you're going to bring in that experienced head for 10 million, 10% of the rumoured transfer budget. Honestly, I'd do it. I would have done it if it was Martinez, and I would definitely do it now if it was Romero, because, again, quality keeper is not playing a lot. Probably isn't going to be playing a lot now. Dina Henderson signed a new contract at Manchester United. There's two very good goalkeepers there. That's not a downer on Romero. I think he wants to be playing football. It's similar to Tom Heaton at Burnley, isn't it? Like you just find that you're a good player and you find yourself in a situation where you're suddenly second, third choice. So that's not good enough for Romero. It wasn't good enough for Heaton. That's an attitude you want. Again, we go back to mentality. I feel like you sign Romero, you pick up, you have your starting goalkeeper to start the season, and you don't kind of miss the beat until Heaton comes back.
Yeah, simple. And then if Romero comes in and he's good enough, Heaton doesn't get back in the squad, does he? And that's a benefit for Aston Villa, though. It doesn't matter, does it, about the individual players? And you signed Heaton and he got injured, and it's a shame he can't get back in the squad. But if Romero is playing good enough because he's essentially winning games with Aston Villa, that's a positive for Villa, so who cares?
Yeah, I mean, we split hairs because we get emotionally attached. Jed Steer is a Villa hero. We cannot ignore that. The things he did for this club, wonderful, amazing things. He stepped up when we needed to. He hasn't really had a chance, but that's the story of Jed Steer. He's never had that chance. But I feel like you have to kind of, and it goes for Tom Heaton as well, the emotion you feel. We kind of have to, when we make these decisions and we talk about this, you kind of have to throw it away, because putting it bluntly, is Romero better? Like, for me, that's very simple. It's a very simple yes, and that's all it needs to be. Goes towards the other players that have been chucked out as well. The emotions and things in our analysis, maybe we have to kind of rein it back a bit. But Romero, for me, mate, all day.
Yeah, There's a question from Marcus Abbas here who says, do you not think Wesley could improve if we change the system and sign another attacking left-back?
Goes back to exactly...
I don't think we'll sign a left-back for a start to answer that question. I think if we were going to improve one of the full-backs, we've done it now. I don't think we'll sign 2 full-backs this window. Potentially, yes, you do need to improve on Matty Target at some point, but I don't think that's necessary as a priority in this window, if I can talk. Wesley coming back, it's an unknown quantity, isn't it, at this point, because we don't know how that injury will have affected him. Yes, again, I would expect him to come back and play games and score goals if Villa create more chances, because we looked like, before he got his injury, that yes, he was getting around against Burnley and looked okay in a better Villa side. Yes, I would think he would score more goals, but like I said, we don't know what Wesley's going to come back from injury and when that will be to make a judgment call on that anyway.
Yeah, I don't really want to split. I know we did it with the goalkeepers, but splitting hairs between the players is hard because it goes back to always the same thing. Wesley isn't available, right? Having the best squad possible, competition in places only makes those players better, whether it's Matt Davies, Wesley, or Ollie Watkins should he join. So simple for me, like Wesley's not playing. I do believe in him. I believe in his story. His story is amazing. He's went the long way. If you're talking long way round, that guy's went the long way round. So, I want him to succeed. I've never not rooted for Wesley. I've always been rooting for him since day one. So, I feel like earlier we have hammered Wesley and we have critiqued him, but that isn't to say that he's bad and wouldn't succeed. I feel like the room is there, the personality is there, the background is there, the mentality is there. Again, to succeed, we'll have to see, because if these players succeed, right, that's good for Villa. We judge them as a team, as a whole squad, and Wesley's part of that. So we'll see.
The final one that we're going to talk about before we leave is Callum Wilson. Whilst we're talking about strikers, now this one's it's chopped and changed, hasn't it? A lot. There's been talk with Newcastle. I think they've offered. I say offered, like they've definitely done it, but there's talk of Matt Ritchie in a swap deal to get Callum Wilson up to Newcastle. Bournemouth want 20-odd million for him. Now people are looking at him thinking, he's not scored any goals. He's got a couple of injury issues. Is he worth it? Is he the one we go for? If Callum Wilson is our starting striker next season, is that good enough or is that disappointing? Now, I don't know. It's hard to tell, isn't it? Because part of me looks at it and thinks, that's the kind of sign I quite like the sound of. But then I look at it a bit more and think, actually, I don't know. It's a weird one. Honestly, I'd prefer Watkins out of the two if it's the case of paying a couple of extra million. I mean, transfer fees and stuff. There's a lot of kind of people freak out a little bit over transfer fees. Like, 28 million, 25 million. They want 3 million more. Does it really matter at that point? Like if we're going in with for Watkins, they want 20 million, then all of a sudden they want, actually we want 50. You go, obviously that's silly. But if we go in with 25 and they say, actually can we get 28? If you're paying 25 anyway, just pay 28. If that's the player you want, go for it. If Dean Smith wants those players, you just go and sign them. And I think this year, because we've got money to spend and we can spend it with FFP now being a Premier League club, if we don't sign a player this season, if we don't end up with Watkins, it's because we didn't want him, I think. And that goes with any of the players that we've been seriously linked with. If we didn't sign Matty Cash after being linked with him now, that would be because that Villa decided actually we don't want him anymore, because Villa have got the money to spend if they want to spend it. And the difference between 28 million and the 24 offered or whatever is peanuts, isn't it, really, in this game?
Yeah, it's splitting hairs because, look, money in football, it's not relative. It just exists as kind of this thing that, like, people believe that a full transfer fee just dropped into someone's bank account, which isn't the case. It's very rare that a club suddenly has 30 million in literal cash, like in their hands, ready to plunk. Yeah, it's always installments. Like installments make deals go, and agents make deals go. So money, it's difficult to say Callum Wilson for 28 million. It's a hard pill to swallow. But look, if the club identify a player that genuinely improves the team, and there's a price for them, that you have to pay that price. Like I'm going to sit on the fence here, to be honest, because look, it's one of those ones that kind of gets floated away, and we don't really know, because Watkins looks like the big thing. It's one of those deals that flows around. 28 million is, look, it's a lot of money. That's Villa's record signing straight up, isn't it?
Yeah.
That makes Watkins and Callum Wilson then Villa's joint record signing. So look, I don't really mind. It's not my money. The way money works is, in terms of financial fair plays, it's over the length of a contract. it's a lot. It's a tough pill to swallow again. 28 million.
But you earn so much money for being in the Premier League, though. Just staying in the Premier League earns you so much money. And if you want to become a club that builds something and that wants to eventually get up into the top 6 and win trophies, like someone's just said in the comments that we didn't pay the extra for Calvin Phillips last year and got Nakamba, and that didn't work out. It works both ways, doesn't it? Because you have to judge these signings after the fact. We could say that, yes, Dean Smith wants Watkins. He's going to go and spend 28 million, and that looks great. Happy days. That's the one he wanted. Perfect. But if he scores 5 goals next year, that is a silly signing then. Just because that's the one we wanted doesn't mean it's always going to work out. So if we sign him for 28 million and he scores 25 Premier League goals next year and Villa finish 6th, everyone will go, what a signing that was, what a bargain. So you have to judge these players after the fact, don't you? What we paid for them beforehand doesn't really matter. We'll see what they're like on the pitch first.
Yeah, what I would say about fees then, I think there is a huge amount of focus because I think it's the easiest tool for comparison is always going to be a fee. I feel like there's obviously cheaper players out there that exist. We saw Sean Weissman, who put up 34 odd goals in the Austrian Bundesliga, move for £4 million, right? £4 million for someone who's just scored. I know the quality of the league isn't the same. I'm not comparing him to Callum Wilson in any way. 30 odd goals, 30 plus goals in the Austrian Bundesliga, moves for £4 million. Callum Wilson scored fewer than 10. 28 million pounds. The comparison is always going to be there between certain players. Wilson and whomever Villa have been linked to sign for a certain fee. If Callum Wilson doesn't score more goals than another linked striker, people just hold it up. The fee is the easiest comparison. It's not relative. It's hard for me to judge on fees because look, again, if Villa identify a player, if he improves that team in any way that they have identified, clearly Premier League experience is a big plus for them. That's what they have literally said. That's what we want in a certain type of player, and that is that striker, whether it's a first choice or second choice. They want that Premier League experience. Callum Wilson has it. If he ticks the boxes for him, spend the money. It's not my money. I don't care. That's very simple. But then again, the fee, it causes anxiety. So, it's again, I don't mind. It's not my money, mate. Family don't mind as well.
Yeah, dog's barking. It's really time to end up quickly, but we'll finish with one last one. The 3 names that have been linked mainly for a forward position are Watkins, Edouard, and Wilson. Is there going to be one striker that Villa sign, or is it going to be a combination of 2 of those 3? Is it going to be a Watkins to play up front and maybe out wide, and Edouard as your main number 9, or is it one or the other and that's it?
Look, I feel with the money spent, so you've got 6. If it was 100 million spent, and say you get your Romero in 10 million, Watkins, let's call it 30 because it's gonna. I don't see it not going down now, right? I just see it constantly going up until the end of October. You've got 30 million there, 10 million on a goalkeeper, 40 million, 56 million. There's still room to play. Like this isn't the end. If it's another striker coming in, there is going to be another player coming in.
And chuck Ben Rama in there as well for another 30, 40 million. Just spend what you want. Do what you want. We don't care.
Villa covered these key bases off, and that was a utility player can cover wing striker. Watkins, if he comes in. Another utility player can cover in the middle, out wide, at the back. Matty Cash. An emergency goalkeeper coming in to start the season. Possibly Sergio Romero. There's money to move. You're looking at like your complete bonus signings now, aren't you? Villa have in these signings covered off what we set out to do, which is we definitely need a new striker. We definitely need a new winger. In one player, we've covered that off right in Ollie Watkins. So again, it's wait and see. I think if he signs. We're not going into Joe Bryan territory here, but it looks like it's close. So we can kind of name him as a player that would likely sign, right? Yeah. I feel like that you've covered off a lot in those signings. I think people wanted a higher profile of player. I don't think that's going to happen. Like Gonzalo Higuain linked 270 grand a week he is on. So there is absolutely no chance that he fits in at a club like Villa, unfortunately. James Rodriguez, another player who's moved to a Premier League club, that kind of Villa where Villa wants to be in Everton. He's going to complete a move. Villa, I think, a season away from really enacting on the plans they've set in with Johan Lange and Rob McKenzie of really moving forward. So again, it's probably going to be another tough season. But look, the signings here are very hopeful. It's similar to last season, I think, in that you brought a lot of potential.
Agreed, and that's a nice way to end it before the dog goes absolutely mental. I believe we're having some electric work done as well, so I think the Wi-Fi might go off at some point. So let's get out of it before something goes wrong. Thanks, James, for joining me again on your day off. Again, just coming in, working hard on a day off. You absolutely love to see it. And also thanks to our colleague Matt Davies, who joined us earlier. If you're watching live at the moment, people asking about what we think of Matty Cash, rewind this Facebook Live. We talked about him for 15 minutes at the start, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, then you already know that we talked about him because you had to get through that to get to this bit. So we'll just move on and end. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back again with some breaking news whenever it happens next, and hopefully it's a number 9 coming through the door next.
Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. Until then, up the Villa.